So I've been playing Watchdogs Legion for a good couple hours at this point, and it's kind of leaving me a bit mixed. Um, I was initially excited for Legion. I was interested to see how this whole decentralized main character thing would work out in practice, and it's not as fun or interesting as I was kind of hoping for it to be. In a game where everyone is playable, what is there to really incentivize spending time with any one specific character? First, let me take a moment to try and explain the whole selling point of the game, that being the ability to play as anyone. Essentially, after a brief tutorial with Double O Tim, you get to pick your first operative for DedSec, with each character having some sort of pro and con to them. Some can start the game with guns, they'll have cars, some can enter certain buildings that others can't, and some will start with certain gadgets or abilities that you haven't unlocked yet for that at that time. Initially, this seemed like it had a lot of promise, and it felt like it was kind of incentivizing to go around and find that one specific NPC that you might need for this stealth mission, or for this assault mission, or for this driving mission, and so on and so forth. But in the end, it kind of feels pointless. For example, the first character I chose started with a drone, as having spent a bit of time with Watch Dogs 2, I felt that the drone was one of those more necessary things. You could fly over, get a quick scan of everything, find out where everyone's at, and then go through and proceed through the area. However, the entirety of London is filled with drones, meaning the ability to summon one on your own ends up feeling kind of pointless and unnecessary. Another thing I kind of feared about this whole decentralized main character thing is that all of the characters more or less have the same personality. From everything that I've seen so far in my playthrough, having the hard drinker, the construction worker, the journalist, and the hacker go through any one specific cutscene, they all more or less react the same, they sound the same, they use almost the same dialogue, and they all more or less have the same personality amongst one another, the only difference being the voice that's used. The only real saving grace, I guess, is that the Bagley AI at least has some sense of humor to play off of, even if it's not really the greatest sense of humor, honestly. I mean, granted, it is actually cool that they did follow through on this whole decentralized main character aspect, but it feels kind of at odds with the game itself. In fact, it almost kind of weirdly reminds me of Far Cry Primal, in that you'll play through it, you'll try it out a couple times, and at various points you'll be like, my god, the bastards actually did it. But the end result is that it all just kind of goes nowhere so far. It's the same character with the same personality. It's just a different body and a different voice. That's the only real difference between everyone. And maybe this is more of a me thing, but I also find the London location to just not be as fun or interesting as it was the last time Ubisoft used it, which was Assassin's Creed Syndicate. In fact, I kind of feel that London felt more alive in 1868 than it does in 2030. The environment just kind of sort of blends into itself. It feels like it's the same gray brickwork from building to building to building, with the occasional landmark that you can see from a distance, such as Big Ben, for example, or the giant Ferris wheel. I don't know what they call it, but it just all sort of blends in, and it kind of makes driving from location to location feel. It almost gives a weird sort of claustrophobic feeling while driving from location to location. If that makes any sense. All that said, maybe at some point the story will sort of turn itself around and it'll start to get a bit more interesting than it currently is. But the one thing it kind of lacks is that there's no real sense of character. Watch Dogs Legion. I mean, unlike Watch Dogs 1 and 2, where I was at least invested in what was happening in the game, especially in 1, where it was sort of in a similar mindset, where it was sort of the gray brickwork and everything kind of feeling the same way, find myself just kind of growing quickly bored. I'll tell myself I'll play it for an hour or two, and then find myself wanting to shut it off after about 20-30 minutes. That said, I am kind of admittedly excited for the DLC, as it sounds like it might fix some of my issues with the lack of any sort of distinct character or personality to the game. I was going to say, I think there were 3 announced. There's going to be one with Aiden from Watch Dogs 1 returning, one with Wrench from Watch Dogs 2 returning, and then the third one is supposed to be some kind of Assassin's Creed story DLC, so that should be interesting. That said, I guess to try and summarize, the crazy bastards actually did it. They did make a game where any NPC was playable, but at the same time, it kind of costs the personality of Watchdogs that it just felt like it was starting to develop in the last game. I'm finding, the excitement quickly fading for this game, especially with a rather boring representation of London, at least from everything I've seen of it so far.